Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Gurudev Jaya Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, we are reading from Canto 2, Chapter 1, entitled The First Step in God Realization, Text 5. Canto 2, Chapter 1, entitled The First Step in God Realization, Text 5. Tasmad Bharat Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavyaha Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Smartavyascha Ichchata Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavyaha Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavyaha Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Sotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. Word meaning. Tasmat, for this reason, Bharat, O descendant of Bharat, Sarvatma, the super soul, Bhagwan, the personality of Godhead, Ishvaraha, the controller, Hari, the Lord who vanquishes all miseries, Shrotavyaha is to be heard, Kirtitavyaha, to be glorified, Cha, also, Smartavyaha, to be remembered, Cha, and Ichchata, of one who desires, Abhayam, freedom. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. Purport. Translation you can repeat once behind me. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. Purport. In the previous verse, Sri Shukadev Goswami has described how the foolish materially attached men are wasting their valuable time in the improvement of material conditions of life by sleeping, indulging in sex life, developing economic conditions, and maintaining a band of relatives who are to be vanquished in the year of oblivion. Being engaged in all these materialistic activities, the living soul entangles himself in the cycle of the law of fruitive actions. This entails the chain of birth and death in the 84 lakh species of life, the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the uncivilized man, and then again the human form, which is the chance for getting out of the cycle of fruitive action. Therefore, if one desires freedom from this vicious circle, then one must cease to act as a karmi or enjoyer of the result of one's own work, good or bad. One should not do anything, either good or bad, on his own account, but must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This process of doing work is recommended in Bhagavad Gita 9.27. Which is that verse? Yajna arthat karmano annyatra. 9.27, which is Yajna arthat karmano annyatra. Also, where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. When one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds. And thus it will become possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. Hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord, and by so doing one will be always in the association of the Lord. This brings freedom from all sorts of fear. The Lord is the super soul, Paramatma, present in the hearts of all living beings. And thus, by the above hearing and glorifying process, the Lord invites the association of all in His creation. This process of hearing about and glorifying the Lord is applicable for everyone, whoever he may be, and it will lead one to the ultimate success in everything in which one may be engaged by providence. There are many classes of human beings: the fruity workers, the empiric philosophers, the mystic yogis, and ultimately the unalloyed devotees. For all of them, one and the same process is applicable for achieving the desired success. Everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear, and everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. The perfect process for achieving this here and now is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uttered by such a great authority as Srila Sukadeva Goswami. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities, and thus all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganar Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Before starting, I seek the blessings of all devotees, so that whatever I speak should be in parampara, it should be pleasing to all devotees and purify my own heart. So, the second canto it has begun. We are in the first chapter. So in the 19th chapter, the last chapter of first canto, the Parikshit Maharaj, he asks Sukadeva Goswami what is the duty of dying man. What dying man should do. And what is the process to achieve that when he is in general living his life. So essentially the question was, what is the goal at the time of death? And to achieve that goal, what process one should follow throughout his life? That is the general duty. What is the general duty? So that is the translation given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So what is the goal and what is the process to achieve? And we understand. So this question he had asked to sages also earlier, before Sukadeva Goswami arrives. Before arrival of Sukadeva Goswami, he had asked this to sages also. And I think Adi Gopal Prabhu, he had very interestingly explained how they were discussing one group of sages. So they were giving some answers, some sages, and others they were refuting, no, this is not the way, this is not the highest than others. So different kinds of sages they had assembled, and they were arguing as to what is the right goal at the time of death, or right process. And then Sukadeva Goswami, he arrives, so everybody agrees him as a spiritual master of Parikshit Maharaj. And he starts answering. So he had asked what he should do and what he should not do. So the first verses, I think, they were about don't. So essentially, a sadhana bhakti, this sadhana bhakti is nothing but following don'ts and do's. Like, no, I also. It is about don'ts and do's, what we should not do and what we should do every day, on everyday basis. So earlier he mentioned that how a materialistic man who is unaware of the goal of human form of life. He wastes his life in material pursuits, material happiness, considering himself as a material body. But we devotees understand that we are not this material body, we are not just this material body, but we are ultimately spirit soul, parts and parcel of Krishna, meant to serve and love God and follow this process. So actually this verse is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we are all very fortunate that we at least know theoretically what is the goal of life. So in that way there is no disqualification in terms of our background, whether we are educated, uneducated, we are married, unmarried, brahmachari, sannyasi. Yes, some advantages of every facility, advantages and disadvantages. But ultimately, equal opportunity is there when we come in touch with this process of bhakti. There is no constraint of time, place and circumstances. Anybody can be successful. Actually, recently Hari Bhakti Prabhu, he had shared this article of Shivaram Swami Maharaj, the offering. If you have read, actually it is very inspiring. I will just share that, how this process of bhakti is very powerful. I will in brief tell that. Actually in Hungary, this story is shared by Shivaram Maharaj. It is basically offering. He writes to Prabhupada, this year Vyas Puja offering he has written. So there he writes how devotees, they come across while distributing books. They distributed books whatever were available, printed in that particular language, to one lady in Hungary. And she was housewife, she had a small shop, ice cream shop. And when they came first time, she took one book of Prabhupada, I think Bhagavatam set, one of the parts, whichever was available, printed. So she took and she started reading and she started following in her life. So she started chanting and following everything else, whatever was mentioned, faithfully. And but her husband, he was very he was opposing her practices. But still, she was very loving, gentle, and she continued practicing. Then her daughters also, they also eventually took up to Krishna consciousness. So then Maharaj, in the end, he writes actually, Prabhupada, this is your mercy, and this is how you are affecting the life of people. And many times devotees or temples, they may not be aware of such devotees who after reading your books, coming in your contact, they follow and they even perfect their lives. So this is your mercy, and that's how you are merciful. And Maharaj says, what we are doing, we are just distributing your books. So this is how this process of bhakti works. There is no prerequisite for that. Oh, you should be this only, this kind of devotee, that. There is no constraint, restriction. Only thing is we have to faithfully follow this process given by Prabhupada. And there he also mentions, Maharaj, Shivaram Maharaj, that she, without doubt, she follows this process. She followed this process. She says actually while conversing with Shivaram Maharaj, and ultimately she lives her life in a very glorious way, surrounded by her girls chanting the names of the Lord. And her consciousness, actually she suddenly was detected by fourth stage cancer. But she never complained about that. Oh, why Lord is doing this to me? She accepted everything very graciously as the will of Lord, and very gloriously she left body. So there Maharaj writes actually, while conversing with her, he could understand that she never doubted whatever statement she read, heard from books of Prabhupada. She just followed without a doubt. So this is the glorious way of practicing bhakti. Anybody can practice. So we are in that way. Our situation is very fortunate that we are at least aware of our goal of human life. And process is also with us. Books are there. Association of devotees is there. So we just have to practice this very seriously, sincerely on regular basis, daily basis. So this verse, the earlier verses, they explain what one should not do or what a materialistic person he does. Specifically this second verse, it mentions those who don't see the Atma Tattva, or those who are blind about the life of human, about the human life. They waste their life in hearing about many topics. For them, there are many subject matters which they hear. This shloka is there. Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nranam Santi Sahasrashaha Apashatam Atma Tattvam Graheshu Grahamedinam. So they have Sahasrasha, hundreds and thousands of subject matters to hear about. So actually we also see in society actually many books, many novels, many fiction books, they are there in the market. And all these books, they never discuss about our future. Actually everybody is working in this world for having good future, bright future prospectus. Even parents, they educate their children. When children are small, they grow. They are given education with this aim that their future is bright. It should be bright. So similarly, Prabhupada says in his lecture that we are also growing old. We also passing the different phases of time. We had past, we are living in present, and we will also inevitably face future, even in this body or after death. Prabhupada says actually these scientists or modern people, they say that there is no future. After death everything is void. But that is not true. Prabhupada says actually future is there, future is not void. Everything is not finished at the time of death. But based on your activities in this life, you will get one of the 84 lakh bodies, which is offered by Lord, material nature. So, the modern man, he doesn't believe in the future. He says, it is void, there is nothing after death. Prabhupada says, that is not fact. We have lived life in past, we are living in present, and inevitably there will be future. So an intelligent man, he should work for betterment of future, he says. But Prabhupada says none of these books which are written, maybe fiction or whatever, newspaper, they never talk about future life. They don't have any idea about future life. But we don't believe them, we should not believe them. There is future life, there is life after death, and based on our activities, we will get future body. So, we should not believe them, but we should believe scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, our Acharyas. And we should work always for the betterment of our future. And so, this is the life of a materialistic man. He is always engaged about hearing news about politics or whatever is happening in society, in different sections of society. But we devotees, we should hear about the Lord that is mentioned in this shloka. So this tasmat word which is there, tasmat means therefore. Many places in Bhagavatam this word comes, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Like this, in 8th chapter also, when Arjuna asks Krishna, how a dying man can remember you? What is the process? I think in first few verses, 8th chapter, he asks about what is the process of remembering you at the time of death. So he says, Antakale cha mameva smaram. So you have to remember me. So there, and then, but I think after 2 verses, this verse is there. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhecha mai sarvani karm mai arpit manobuddhir mam yesasi asamsaya. So there, this tasmat word is there, therefore. And many times similar verses are there. If some subject matter is explained, after that, therefore you should do this. So the earlier verses is mentioned how a materialistic man, he wastes his life. Therefore, in this verse is mentioned, therefore, intelligent person, he should tasmat bharata sarvatma bhagwan ishvaro hari shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavya ichchata abhayam. So, those who desire abhayam, freedom from fear, they should hear about the Bhagavan, who is Ishvara, who is Sarvatma, who is Ishvara, who is Hari. Bhagavan, who is controller, Ishvara. Who is Hari? Hari is who vanquishes all miseries. And who is the Sarvatma? He is the super soul. So these are the adjectives about the Lord. So if we hear about the Lord, then we can be fearless. So in lecture, I was reading Prabhupada's lecture. He says, actually this whole material world is based on this factor, fear. Everybody is fearful. And they are trying to get rid of that fear by different ways. And this modern advancement, Prabhupada says, is nothing but the outcome of this tendency to overcome this fear. Medical advancement or economic security, investment, almost all the advancement or this modern economy which we say, even Prabhuji was mentioning yesterday, the statics of different industry, how it is based on fear. I think this cosmetic, before that what was textile industry. So we can see this is nothing but the way, in the different ways human being is trying to overcome this fear. But ultimately, this fear is due to identification with this body. In 11th canto also this shloka is there where Navayogendras, they are answering the questions posed by King Nimi. And this verse is there. Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshatah syat ishat apetasya viparyayah smriti. What is next line? Tanmayato buddha abhajetam bhaktek esham guru devatatma. So, bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshatah syat. So, this bhayam is abhinivesh. Abhinivesh is absorption. In dvitiya, dvitiya is other things. And why it is there? Ishat apetasya viparyaya asmriti. Ishat is, it is due to apetasya, turning our back towards Ishwar, Bhagwan, Lord. And viparyaya asmriti. And we forget the Lord. When we turn away from the Lord, turn our back towards Lord, then we forget Him because of the Maya, Tanmayayatu, because of the Maya of the Lord, we forget. So when we identify ourselves, absorb ourselves, considering ourselves this body, then, and by turning away from the Lord, then what happens? Due to Maya, we forget Him. There is asmriti. But Buddha abhajet bhaktek esham guru deva. But intelligent person, he should practice, he should abhajet, he should worship me by this bhakti, ekaya, that is unalloyed bhakti, considering Guru Devatatma, considering Guru as one's life and soul. So, the cause of bhai is what? Identification with this body. And what is the way to overcome it is follow the spiritual master, instructions of spiritual master, considering him on the level of Lord, considering him as equal to Lord. That means taking his instructions seriously. And that is the way we can overcome this fear. So, at the time of death, it is very difficult to remember the Lord, actually. And death is the time when one is very much fearful. We cannot imagine that. So, in 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, this question was asked by Arjuna, and he gives the process. The 2-3 shlokas are there. But before that, I was thinking of discussing this shloka. Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu smaranam padasevanam archanam vandanam dasyam sakhyam atmanivedanam iti pumsarpita Vishnu bhaktische navalakshanam kriyeta bhagavati adha tanmanne aditam uttamam. So, Prahlad Maharaj says, and this shloka is very famous, that what is bhakti? Bhakti is essentially practicing this 9 processes mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj and Acharyas. So this Shravanam, Shrotavya is the first thing. When we properly hear, then we can properly chant, glorify, Shrotavya, Kirtitavya, then we can do proper Kirtan. And then gradually we can Smartavya, we can remember Smaran. So this 7th canto shloka of Bhagavatam, 7, I think it is 2nd chapter. Just wait. Yes, it is 5th chapter, 7, 5, 23, 24. You can just take those shlokas. So there very nicely Prabhupada mentions about these processes. He very systematically explains what is Shravan, what is Kirtan. So I just was going through it, so I thought we can just see that. So before that, actually this shloka, today's shloka, 5th shloka, is mentioned in NOD also. It is given as a proof also, interestingly. I was just seeing that. So in NOD, second wave, second subsection of first section, Eastern section is about sadhana bhakti. So first section, Eastern section, it has 4 chapters, 4 parts, 4 waves actually. So first is description of Samanya Bhakti. Second is description of Sadhana Bhakti. Third is Bhav Bhakti and Prem Bhakti. So second wave there, while explaining the Sadhana Bhakti, process of Sadhana Bhakti, he explains, Rupa Goswami, he explains about Vaidhi Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti. So there are 2 types of Sadhana Bhakti. One is Vaidhi Sadhana and Raganuga Sadhana. So Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, he says, definition is Yatra Raganavaptatvat Pravrattir Upajayate Shasane Naiva Shastrasya Sa Vaidhi Bhaktir Uchyate. So here he gives the definition. What is the sadhana bhakti? Sadhana bhakti is we don't have attachment at all. We don't have liking. But what is the cause of practicing, taking of this practice is shasanenaiva shastrasya. Shasan is what? Discipline. So one is discipline by danda. Usually parents, they discipline their child, and mother, she has to beat many times. So this is very gross way of disciplining oneself by shasan. So this shasan word we know in Marathi, shasan. So what is the shasan? By what shasan we take up this process? Shastrasya. So we hear, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord says, Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. And we also experience, it is very miserable. So what we do? We take up, we hear Shastra, and by that we try to discipline ourselves. So mind says, no problem, sleep. We can chant later, maybe tomorrow. But we say, no, I have to chant today. Because Prabhupada has told me I have given vow, those who are initiated specifically. So the whole discipline is due to Shastra. So sa vaidi bhaktir uchyate. And in NOI also, I think 7th and 8th verse, specifically 7th, there also Rupa Goswami says, Shat Krishnanam charitadi sitapi avidya pittopataptarasnasya narochirkanu kintu adarat anudinam khalu saiva justa swadvi kramad bhavati tadgata moolahantri. Actually, because of the jaundice of avidya, these sweet names of the Lord, Nam, Rup, Guna, Lila, although they are very sweet, but because I have been infected with this disease of avidya, which is like jaundice, although this is sweet, just like sugar candy, it is very sweet, but one who is affected by this jaundice, he cannot experience the sweetness because of the tongue, diseased tongue. So similarly, even though we don't feel the sweetness, we just chant because of the instructions of the spiritual master. So this is the definition of sadhana bhakti. And there, after this, Rupa Goswami, he mentions this verse, Tasmat Bharat Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishwarari Shrotavya Kirtitavasya Smarchatam Ichchata Abhayam. So this verse is mentioned that actually to avoid the miserable condition of life, if one wants to find solution to the problems of life, which are birth, old age, disease and death, and three tap. So if one wants to get rid of that, what we have to do? We have to tasmat, hear about the Lord. And Prabhupada says, it is clearly mentioned here, we have to hear about the Lord. Many times people, they have confusion also. Just like even great sages actually. They were having confusion. What is the actual goal? Actually, we cannot even imagine the kind of scholars or the intelligent sages they were. And I read in article of Shivaram Maharaj only, he writes somewhere, actually he glorifies Prabhupada, how he has presented the truth about the Lord in very clear language. There is lot of clarity, there is no confusion. He mentions that such clarity, such clear presentation is rare, even the cities of demigods, he mentions. Such clarity about the purpose of human life and the process is rare, even the sophisticated demigods who have much better enjoyment facilities, much better intelligence than us. So he mentions, but the clarity with which you have presented your books, you have presented the spiritual knowledge, is rare even in the cities of demigods, he writes like that. So we have this process and we have to hear, that is very clear. So this hearing should be very systematic. Main thing is for us, because we are in ISKCON, it is very important to understand these 4 books, and everybody has access to these 4 books: NOI, NOD, Bhagavad Gita, and Ishopanishad. For first 4 books, and Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. If one reads these 3 books and renders service, Prabhupada says his success is guaranteed. So this is very hope-giving, and many times Prabhupada had said this, and I was sharing last time also. I heard in one lecture, devotee was mentioning, actually when devotees, they say something, what is Lord's duty is to, when a pure devotee says something, it is Lord's duty to fulfill those words of pure devotee. And Prabhupada, many times we hear, he says, you just chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles, and sincerely try to help in preaching this mission of Krishna consciousness, sincerely, whatever way possible, then I will take you back home, back to Godhead. And many times one may have the doubt, oh, how is this possible? Just by chanting 16 rounds, I cannot even imagine chanting 64 rounds on Ekadasi, and even though it is very difficult, even though I may try, but every mantra is like a mountain to cross. So one may think like this, which is very good, which may make us humble. But on the other part, if we are sincere in our practice, actually it is Lord's duty actually to fulfill those words. Because Prabhupada is not ordinary person, he is Acharya, and he has done such a wonderful revolution in Kali Yuga by his spreading Krishna consciousness, that Lord, he has to take his words seriously. So we have that hope. So we should not take disadvantage of that, but we can take that to make us more serious, sincere in our practice, and try to follow the process which is given by Prabhupada sincerely. So this hearing is very important, and it should be very systematic. So I was telling that this 4 books and Bhagavatam we should read here. Actually time is up, so I will stop here. So you can read this purport, is very nice, 9 processes, everything is given in this. So I will stop here. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavatam ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.